Whole thing, Jake.
Hey guys, as promised, I am making a video today about book recommendations. I'm going to have book recommendations for books that you can read out loud to your child, but also these are all books that are totally age appropriate and reading level for anywhere from like 8 to 12 years old, obviously higher because I enjoy these books too, but they're totally safe and really good reads, I think, for any age 12 and up. So I'm going to be showing you guys the books that I've read with my son, books that he's read on his own, and then books that I've read that I think are really good stories that everyone should have in their house too. I'm going to start with the books we've read together, and I'm going to share a little bit about each one individually so you can see if it sounds like something you would want to read. So the very first book that I'm going to share is The Great Turkey Walk. This is probably one of my favorite books of all time. It's about a 15-year-old boy named Simon who travels from Missouri to Denver, Colorado with a herd of turkeys. And it is really funny. It's also really sweet and just a precious story. But it was so entertaining. My son was laughing. We read it faster than our scheduled amount of time it takes to read. It was so good and so quickly entertaining. Basically, page turner for any age, and definitely recommend this book. Like I said, it's called The Great Turkey Walk from Kathleen Karr. The next book is Little Britches. It's actually a series. So this one's Little Britches, Father and I Were Ranchers by Ralph Moody. So it starts off with a hook at the very beginning. It's like my father and I were not very close, or I never knew my father until we moved to the house in Colorado. And I like this story because it's told from the perspective of an 8-year-old boy. He's growing up, they're living on a ranch. Anyway, he has just so many adventures, and there's this underlying story of him connecting with his father. I think I cried about the last 50 or so pages because it just gets so good and moving. And like I said, it's a series, so if you want to look for more books by him, I recommend any of the books by this author because it was a really, really good story. The next book I'm recommending is The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Speare. This was set during it was 1680, right before the Salem witch trials, right? So it's right before that took off, and I don't know if you know anything about that time in history, but until the Salem witch trials, when there was 200 trials, there had only been 2 or so that I think had been convicted at that time. So this was kind of right before everything blows up, right? It's arriving, she's coming from the Bahamas, and she's arriving in Puritan New England. And I mean, I've lived on a tropical island, so I can imagine the stark difference coming from this laid back, carefree Caribbean lifestyle to bang Puritan New England in the 1700s. Definitely recommend this book. It's really entertaining too. It's just such a good story, and I definitely recommend it. Boys and girls, I think all the tweens would enjoy this book. The next one is Walk the World's Rim by Betty Baker. It's a really good story about a 14-year-old little boy named Chaco who travels to Mexico with Esteban and the other seniors. And it's just a really interesting story, and I like the history it tells and kind of showing his survival skills based on his story and his background and what he knows. It was just it's a really good story. My 8-year-old is enjoying it, but my older kids also really like it, so it's definitely age appropriate for any age really, but from I would say 8 and up really enjoy this story. Okay, so Miracles on Maple Hill. I'm not gonna lie, when I first started reading this book, I didn't connect to it instantly. Although actually looking back at it now, it's it was really good from the very first page. But it's about a family and how they heal as a family when their dad is coming back. So their dad comes back, he was a prisoner of war. It doesn't specify, but I'm pretty sure based on the time frame that it was World War I. So he comes back and they're all going through this massive change, and they end up going to the house on Maple Hill. And it's a really, really touching story. It shows how they all come together, and I think it shows a lot of grace and courage and kindness. So many good lessons to be learned from this book, so I definitely recommend The Miracles on Maple Hill. Okay, so the next one is Freedom Train, the story of Harriet Tubman. I mean, I think this is probably still read in schools, but I know that we read it for school, and it was such a good story. Anything that is, I feel like, true stories of heroes, really, in our history are good books, and this one in particular was really good. Also, the movie on Amazon, if you haven't seen it, I don't think it's an Amazon movie. I think it's just a movie, but we watched it on Amazon. But that came out recently. That was a really good movie. We found it really true for the facts, and I always am happy when they do a movie that is actually fact-based and they stick true to the story. So I do recommend the movie. And this book, that was really good, about Harriet Tubman. So another really fun book was The Shakespeare Stealer. Actually, I think most of these have been historical fiction, or in Harriet Tubman's case, not even fiction, just historical. So this one was really funny. It's The Shakespeare Stealer by Gary Blackwood, and it's about a boy who gets hired, essentially, to steal the Shakespeare plays and write them down in a code. I wouldn't say hired because he's like an indentured servant, which is a crazy concept for my children today, but I think it's interesting because a lot of the stories we've read, even like the Benjamin Franklin stories where they're indentured servants, is just really interesting to see and see how they get out of that situation. But The Shakespeare Stealer was really entertaining. We really enjoyed it, and I think it'd be good for all the kids this age. It's super age appropriate. Okay, so if your child is a fast reader and doesn't need any more school-related books, the Redwall series, if they don't know about them yet, oh my goodness, they're so good. They're so entertaining. Fantasy series. They're perfectly clean. They're animals, and they're so funny. There's always like, I would say, a large plot, and then there's different stories within the plots. And even my younger children really enjoy these, but I read them as a teenager as well, and I'm reading them out loud to my kids, and they all love them, love the stories, love the adventure, and I would say, emphasis on the heroes, which I think is a good thing. Okay, so if you're wondering, like, how in the world does she read this many books, or where does she find the time? Because I've definitely had a lot of people say, like, I don't have time to read that much, or I get bored or tired. My next video coming out is going to be a day in the life, so you can see exactly where I put my time, because I also work from home and homeschool and then just like have life, right? So that's going to be the next video, so keep an eye out for that. And then following that, I'm going to be doing a video about why I read so much, because you also may be thinking, like, she sounds a little crazy. Like, why does she read so much? But I have my reasons, and it's not just because I love it, which I do. There's actually a lot of benefits, so keep an eye out because that video is also going to be coming up real soon here. Okay, guys, so I had to throw in some classics. I've got Pat of Silver Bush and Mistress Pat together from Ellen Montgomery, so the same author as Anne of Green Gables, which I don't have, but I would recommend too. Such a good story, and also just like good, wholesome books, so definitely recommend these two. And then the Hardy Boys, which I feel like speak for themselves, but they've somehow been like forgotten. We got these at like a Goodwill a couple years back, and they're so good. Also, the Nancy Drew stories. Those are such good books. All these like wholesome older mysteries, I definitely recommend. And Hardy Boys are a really fun read. We've read them out loud, but my son's also read them on his own. So you can pick these up at like a Goodwill or any used bookstore you find. Probably has some good Hardy Boys books there. Lastly, these are the books that my son, who is almost 12, but he does read a little bit above his grade level. I don't know. I feel like the books, like, he likes interesting books. So he's got all these recommendations. I would say anybody from 8 to an adult would enjoy. The very first ones I'm going to talk about are the Extreme Adventure series from Usborne. They are extremely adventurous. I don't remember when we started reading these, but they're super fast paced. It's like, bam, like crisis averted. Every single chapter, it's very fast paced. So if you have like a more reluctant reader, I would say these can help like get them going, because you just want to read them really fast. Like, they're pretty short too, so you feel accomplished because you read a whole book today. But these are really good stories, and I think my son just reread the entire series last week. He was like, oh, that was a fun one. I should just read that again. So all of these are really good. I'll put links to all of the books below so you guys can find them. Okay, so this is the Impossible Quest series. My son told me why he liked them, and because I haven't read them, right? Like, he's read them. So we got them from Usborne, and he said he liked them because every single book had its own adventure, but it all kind of built up and led into more So at the end, it all came together. So that each book had its own mystery, but there was like a bigger mystery to be solved, and all the mysteries combined kind of like finished in like climaxed in that book 4 or 5. There are 5 books, and he said it like comes together in the last 2 books. So he loved this series. He definitely recommended it to all the kids his age because he was like, this was his favorite. I think he's read it a number of times. It just stays in his room and he reads it a lot. Okay, the next one was Jack, the Fairly True Tale of Jack and the Beanstalk. So he didn't think he was going to like this one, and he ended up loving it because he liked the story was different than he was expecting, and Jack was able to conquer the monster in an unusual way. Anyway, he also read The Grump and Red, but Jack was his favorite. So I do recommend Jack, the Fairly True Story. I have to put Diary of a Wimpy Kid on here because even though I have not read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, my son has read them out loud to some of us, and he has read all of the books probably multiple times, and he really enjoys all of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He also really liked the Norse myths, and he likes them because you can just flip to your favorite story, and it's got a lot of great graphics, but he really enjoys all of the mythological stories, and he really enjoyed this particular book. Also another Usborne book. We read a lot of Usborne, clearly. Okay, and then he also really likes the graphic novels, so I'm personally didn't read a lot of graphic novels, and I also only thought of them as like catalogs, magazines, that kind of thing. So when Usborne started doing graphic novels that I felt like were age appropriate and I wasn't going to be worried about was in said catalog, I was really excited because he loves them. So this is the Three Musketeers. He's also read Dracula, Robin Hood, I think the Odyssey. So there's a number of different stories that come as graphic novels. If your kids like graphic novels, this is a good way to get them a book that doesn't necessarily feel like a book. He read it pretty fast, but he reads through it and looks at it quite often. He really enjoys it. I don't know about your kids. My kids love mythology. So we've done a lot of Trojan War, the Odyssey. I've read them the smaller, like kids version from Usborne. I've read to my first grader. That's what we're reading right now. Sorry. So my first graders read it. Obviously my third graders already heard them. But my son loves the Trojan War and Odyssey, the Greek myths and the Trojan War, both of these books. So if your kid enjoys those stories, like he just loves to have these in his room and he just reads them all the time because they're just really interesting tales. Definitely recommend both of these by Olivia Coolidge. Okay, so we've got another Usborne book, and this one was fun. My son loved it. He read it quickly and then wanted the next one because this is the Book of Secrets and the next one's the Book of Answers. So he said he liked the series because the first one had a lot of secrets and the second one had a lot of answers, clearly. You can kind of tell from the title. But another good fantasy series, and he really enjoyed it. They go in on quests. A lot of the Usborne books, or a lot of the books that my son enjoys are, I'd say, quest-focused, where they're going on some sort of mission or some sort of quest. Okay, and then we have Milo Speck, the Accidental Agent. This is another book that I ordered from Sunlight just as like a filler book for him to read. And he really enjoyed it because his little boy accidentally kind of gets thrown into a quest of saving his father. And he said he liked it for that reason, that he wasn't necessarily trying to, but he just had to keep going. He had to persevere to save his father, even though he kept trying and failing. So this was a good story and had some good lessons for him. Okay, and last but not least, we've got Treasure Hunters. The reason that my son said he liked this one the most was because he liked that the kids were still kids, and he felt like they weren't like grown-ups. They weren't relying on the grown-ups. He said specifically that they were the kids and they were like doing the treasure hunting themselves. And he just liked that it was all about the kids' treasure hunting. He also said that there's a sequel that he would like me to purchase. So I got this at Goodwill. My suggestion is like, go to Goodwill or go to a used bookstore and find some good stories. You can like take some notes, find the books that sounded the most interesting and see if you can find them, on Amazon for a good price or like I said, like a Goodwill or a used bookstore near you. Okay, so yeah, stay tuned for next video, which is gonna be my blog. And then also, if you're looking for ways to have fun with your kids, or if you're looking for ideas of activities they can do besides school, you can check out one of the videos I'm gonna have right up here.